Hi, Heidi. Welcome. Hi, Anna. Welcome.
Hello.
That picturesque park background just makes me wish it wasn't snowing right now.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna give it maybe a minute or so just to see if anybody else joins, and then we'll kind of kick off. Right. Well, just out of kind of respect for everybody's time, we'll get this show on the road. Before we kind of launch in, I wanted to let everybody know that this meeting is going to be interpreted into the Spanish language. So in order to do that, you must join the meeting audio with your computer, and you, as a participant joining a language channel, you can broadcast back into the main audio channel if you unmute your audio and speak. And in order to kind of get into the interpretation channels, you'll go to the bottom right-hand side of your screen and click on the globe or the three dots for the settings menu, and select the language that you'd like to listen to in. And for folks who speak English and are going to be in the English channel, I'd encourage you to select the English channel in that interpretation menu so that if there is a Spanish language speaker who'd like to broadcast back into the main session, everybody can hear that interpretation as it comes. And Francisco, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Buenas noches a todos, bienvenidos. Como todas las reuniones del CAG, esta reunión es bilingüe y para poder disfrutar de la interpretación en español, si puede ir a la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla, seleccione el icono de interpretación, que es el globito, y procede a seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. Es importante que todos seleccionemos el idioma de nuestra preferencia para poder recibir la interpretación ya sea al español o al inglés.
All right, and I just put you in the interpretation channel, Francisco. And before I hand it over to Catherine, who'll be facilitating, I just wanted to say welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out on this snowy November evening to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the community and what Dottie has been working on. As a reminder, my name is Chris Callanan. I am Dottie's new community engagement specialist. I started here, let's say 3 weeks ago now, and I'll be kind of taking over the facilitation of these West Area Community Advisory Group meetings moving forward. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You will see a new calendar invite series sent out through my account, so that I own that invite series. So sorry for that scheduling whiplash, but with that, I'll hand it over to Catherine to introduce herself and go over the agenda.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. It's been a little bit since I've seen you, a minute. So really am pleased to be with you here tonight. We have a full agenda. We want to spend some time on the West Area Plan draft update. I know many of you have been involved in this plan over a course of a period of time, and we'd like to bring you up to date on that, and then also share with you the Healthy River Corridor study. We're going to have a full agenda, and we want to be sure that we're paying attention to both your comments and concerns. So there's two ways that you can do that. First way is just raise your hand and we'll be watching that carefully. And also you can put comments in the chat, and we also monitor those and bring those forward. So either way you'd like to do it, some people prefer to speak, other people prefer to use the chat room, and some do both. So don't hesitate. And with that, I'm gonna ask Val to take over the West Area Plan draft update.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'll take a quick moment to introduce myself because I'm sure this group is used to Eugene Howard coming to visit as the former project manager. Sadly, Eugene has left the city recently, still lives in the city, I believe, going to private sector. So if you are close to Eugene, feel free to reach out, congratulate him. He's really excited with the new opportunity. And so as mentioned, we have been in the neighborhoods for almost 3 years now. Part of that is because of a 2-year global pandemic. Another big part of that is because back in May, we actually had the very first draft of the plan ready to go, reviewed by the steering committee, and we took the opportunity over the summer to incorporate lots and lots of feedback that we received from the steering committee on that first draft, really focusing on further, integrating and understanding, how everything intersects under that quality of life umbrella, right? So when you think about food access, when you think about mobility, when you think about housing, the economy, all of these different factors, what makes you feel safe and comfortable in your neighborhood, that truly is that umbrella of quality of life, and everything kind of works under that. And so we'll kind of see some of those changes as we go. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we'll cover here. I know I have about, I think 15, 20 minutes, but you all please stop me if I'm running over. I want to also make sure to take some time to answer any questions you might have. So we'll quickly cover just a quick cap on or highlight of the draft plan revisions. Again, some of those major revisions that I spoke to, and then some of the focus areas on what was shared and how staff is integrating that to date. And then the other big piece where this will kind of be our call and where we need your help and support is with our community engagement during this phase of the process. Again, this is going to be the first time that we are officially public releasing this plan. And so some of the community members, this is going to be the first time that they're being involved in this plan. I know folks will have a lot of questions, and so please feel free to reach out to staff. We've got lots of engagement opportunities that we're going to share today and how you can connect to the plan process. Next slide, please. So again, speaking to those major plan revisions we've been working hard on over the summer with our steering committee, and even further and in depth unpacking a lot of information and content with a small working group that we convened from the larger steering committee over the summer. We received a number of comments on the Conveo platform, which is where you can submit your comments online electronically. We've received 312 steering committee comments and small working group comments. And then in addition to that, 30 open forum comments. So that's another option online where you can actually just submit a form and get a little bit more depth in the feedback that you'd like to share more directly with the team. And we'll follow up and loop back with you on that. We've got brand new sections. Super excited to share that we have incorporated a whole new water section. So a section under the quality of life chapter, truly committed and dedicated to water. We're really excited for folks to get their hands on that. We've updated lots of our maps, graphics, case studies, and then of course, continuing to work with our partner agencies, both internally and externally. Next slide, please. Some of the bigger moves, again, we're really focusing on quality of life with this plan. I just want to take a quick moment to share that this is a very transformational plan. A lot of intention, a lot of leaning into the discomfort has been done and provided throughout this plan, with our steering committee and small working groups throughout the community. We've got a brand new section that's very direct and really to the point of historic issues and context. And I say that because, these are not pieces of the story, right, that are typically embedded in traditional planning documents. Again, making this really monumental and transformational. And a lot of this really, I want to give credit where credit is due, is because of the steering committee and how much we pushed to get this plan to the next level. And that's all to say with the caveat that we still have lots of work to do, which is why this public review is so important for the community to tune in. We've also got new content focused on environmental resiliency, climate action. And then we also revised I'm sure you all are familiar with the River Sisters Circle Partnership case study. That is a connection, not just in Denver, but throughout the region, really highlighting and bringing to light our water systems and the connection and the importance of the history that ties to the land and the water. Next slide, please. Again, speaking to that reorganization and another really important monumental piece of the changes made over the last few months, you will see, if you're in tune with our planning documents, that typically our documents start with the land use and built form section. You'll see this is the first of its kind to start with quality of life. Again, this is how important quality of life is to the community, to the steering committee. We've heard that loud and clear. We've also received, some negative feedback that, why do we start with the plans with land use and built form? It feels like we're tailoring it and speaking to the developers. It feels like more extraction. So we heard that loud and clear. And, with this reorganization, we wanted to put quality of life right up at the front. So when folks open this plan, they can understand exactly what this community is about and what they stand for. So that was a really exciting change that we made. Next slide, please. Spend a little bit more time here. This is very important. I'm sure you all are familiar and, understanding of the historic redlining in these neighborhoods. West Denver is very significant in this case, just because these neighborhoods were well within the redlining boundaries. And so for those of you that are not familiar with redlining, back in, I believe it was the 1930s, banks and local government and other stakeholders got together and redlined the cities and told people, based off the color of your skin, you cannot live or own business in these areas. They also provided incentives to the folks that were allowed to flourish and start to really ground themselves and build that wealth, that generational wealth, the inheritance, right? So in these areas, we're seeing a lot of these inequities and remnants from historic redlining directly affecting and impacting our neighborhoods today. Next slide, please. And before I move forward, a quick fact there is that redlining did not end until 1968. So that was a very significant piece of history and time that really tremendously impacted these neighborhoods. Another component that we're really trying to bring into the plan is really that topographic perspective. What are the foundations of these areas? What does the water look like, right? What does the green space look like? And really thinking about it from an ecological perspective. Next slide. And then again, just more on, his history summaries, bringing that story together, connecting the dots, trying to tell the story, and for folks to pick up this plan and be interested and inspired to read it, right? And that it would speak to them. So really thinking about the language, bringing down that planner jargon, making it, for the community and not for planners like myself to read and provide this guidance to things like rezonings and future development and things like that. We're really trying to build this plan and write these plans for the community. Next slide. I'll spend a little bit of time here. This is a really big important factor and piece that's going into all of our neighborhood plans. So if you're familiar with Blueprint Denver, which is our citywide land use and transportation plan, that plan was updated in 2019 to include 3 different equity analyses or concepts. The first one, and they're different colors. So the purple map is specifically relating to access to opportunity. The yellow maps are going to speak to vulnerability to displacement. And then the blue, like kind of greenish maps are speaking to housing diversity and sort of the different housing circumstances within the area. So I won't go too much into detail there, but you can find in the introduction that we've really emphasized and beefed up that piece of the plan to really show the history and the existing inequities that are within the neighborhoods. Next slide. Again, just wanted to share this beautiful water map. This is such a great map that we were able to integrate into the brand new water section. Again, this is something that is new, it's innovative, it's really pushing the needle, and it's really truly tying that foundation in speaking to what is planning, how do we build on our ecological bases like water, like the green space, you know, understanding tree canopy, understanding air quality, understanding connectivity, things like that. Next slide. And then another thing that we heard loud and clear from our committee was that, you know, the recommendations were just a little bit too embedded and kind of covered up in this 300-page document. It's 300 pages because some of these neighborhoods have not been visited since 1986. That's going to be Barnum and Barnum West. Valverde's plan is from 1991. I believe Villa Parks is also from 91. West Colfax is a little bit newer, but I would still argue out of date. That one's from 2006. And so what we wanted to do, because, you know, from the implementation side of things, when you read some of these previous plans, a lot of stuff did not get implemented. A lot of things did not get done. So we are, you know, bringing those things into this plan along with new items that we've heard from our committee and our community to date. And we really tried to prioritize and reorganize the plan so that we could summarize the recommendations at the beginning of each chapter. Just to quickly run through those chapters and remind everyone, there's 4 major chapters. The first, again, and most important in this area is quality of life. The second is mobility, so all modes of transportation. The third is land use and built forms. So think about residential, commercial, industrial, manufacture, innovation, flex from the use perspective, and then built forms, right? Think about single units, 2 units, multi-units, row house, triplex, that kind of thing. And then the last one is economy and housing. So again, speaking to affordability, involuntary displacement, gentrification, a lot of these very big things, high ticket items that everybody across the city is talking about. And it definitely depends on what areas you're in and the levels you're talking about it. Next slide. For the mobility section, we heard a lot about this being very long, repetitive. How can we kind of further, you know, sort of massage it and condense it and simplify it? So we streamlined the mobility section tremendously. We reduced the amount of recommendations, not to take away from anything, but really just to emphasize and build up what we already have and not be so repetitive within the recommendations. We also added a mobility matrix, which is hopefully going to make things a little bit easier to understand kind of where we're addressing things from the pedestrian, bicycle, transit, you know, vehicle and freight perspective. Next slide. And then for land use, again, this is an opportunity to take a look at Blueprint Denver's land use and built form, I'm sorry, Blueprint Denver's land use and transportation citywide plan, and then look at the guidance that we are sort of mirroring or updating in this case for the neighborhood area plan. And so we did revisit some of those Blueprint Denver future places areas and sort of added a little bit more to these to this map specifically and some content to the plan. Next slide. Other big changes at the very beginning of this process back in 2019, beginning of 2020, the steering committee took an opportunity and quite a bit of time and intention to really carve up and build our what we're calling guiding principles for the plan. And so you'll find those now at the beginning of the plan. And we did do quite a bit of updating, really to just fine tune and understand, what are solidifying the guiding principles and putting those at the forefront of the plan. Next slide. And then neighborhood chapter recommendation summaries. So a lot of feedback we've been hearing around the neighborhood chapters is how can we beef those up a little bit more? How can we get into more depth? How can we highlight some of those bigger inequities that are happening in some of these areas? For example, Valverde, we hear a lot more about air quality, about community safety. Villa Park, we hear a lot about, involuntary displacement and dramatic changes and context and character for the neighborhood. You all already know the issues and challenges with West Colfax. I don't have to go there. So we're really trying to be a little bit more intentional in understanding how we add more to the neighborhoods sections, specifically to the recommendations, and then tie those back to the area-wide recommendations as well. Next slide. This is a really awesome piece of the plan, because if you do not want to read all 300 pages, you can skip to the very end and you will find a full list spreadsheet of every single recommendation included in the plan and included in each chapter. You'll see it has recommendation type, the policy action. Timeline is going to be either ongoing, short-term, or long-term. Action type, regulatory infrastructure or services and programs. And then, of course, holding accountability to our internal partner agencies as well as our external partner agencies. So that is the goal here for the matrix that is included in the very end of the document in the implementation chapter. Next slide. So here's where we need your help, and we are going to share all the ways that we are trying to connect with our community members in these 6 neighborhoods. Next slide. The first big one that I would love everyone to put on your calendar is Saturday morning, upcoming November 12th. That's just, a little over a week away from us, from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Barnum Elementary Cafeteria. We will be holding the first in-person public meeting since pre-COVID era. We are very excited. We wanted to make sure to hold this opportunity for community members and the public to get their hands on the plan, to get an update and overview of why this is important, why they should be tuned in and inspired to read this plan and provide feedback and guidance. And so we will also provide food, Spanish interpretation. We will have the presentations in English and Spanish, childcare, and we've got all 3 of the council offices present, as well as we've reached out to all the registered neighborhood organizations, our partner agencies, to invite them as guests if they'd like to show up and connect. And then we've also got, presentation component, and then we're going to break out into sort of what we're calling this open house surrounding our presentation area, and we'll have lots of planning staff there. We'll have our steering committee members volunteering. Some of them will be present to talk to you about their experiences, all of their work and contribution. Again, these steering committee members are not getting paid. These steering committee members have been on this plan process for almost 3 years. So I do want to recognize, because I know some of them are in the room today, and we should, be very proud of the fact that this committee has been fully tuned in and highly committed to the best outcome of this plan. Next slide. So with regards to other in-person activities, and I'll kind of close off here. I know I'm probably running short on time. We've got RNO and community group touch points through November, December, and January. We're actually going to push that out just because, the holidays are around the corner. We don't want to restrict folks from getting the opportunity to plug in and check in with us planners and see if we have any questions or anything to talk about. We also have a number of in-person office hours and virtual office hours that will be held throughout the planning area. You can see the list here of 5 locations that we will be at, and I thought there was a 6th one, but maybe my screen is covering it. So these will be Tuesday mornings every week starting next week. The very first one will be in the Sun Valley neighborhood at Rudy Rec Center. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? This is out of date. Ignore number 1. We'll start at number 8, 11-8, sorry, number 2, 11-8. We'll be in the West Colfax neighborhood at Brew Culture Coffee Shop. I apologize apologize because this part of my slide deck did not get updated as I wanted. The following week on the 15th, we'll be in Barnum and Barnum West at the Rec Center. December 6th, we'll be at the brand new redone Valverde Youth Empowerment Center. And then we'll finish off on December 13th at one of the local businesses, Los Carboncitos in Villa Park neighborhood. So if you have questions, feel free to pop in. We will be there for 2 hours, 11 to 1. If that doesn't work for you, next slide, we'll get into the virtual and electronic options. We've got social media communications going out live and active. We're, pumping information out in newsletters through all of our platforms, with the help of council, with the help of our RNOs and neighborhood groups. We've got electronic flyers in English and Spanish, which you can find right on the webpage, and I'm happy to share those as well. Again, online office hours will also be Wednesday and Thursday. You can find those schedules and sign up on Sign Up Genius online. Conveo response platform is already up. So today you can get in there on the webpage and start providing feedback now. And then we also have our online comment form if that's an additional way that you'd like to provide feedback and some of the other ways are just not comfortable for you, or maybe the Conveo platform is a bit too much and heavy to get into. You can simply click on the online comment form and then we will get that directly to the team and make sure that we follow up. Next slide. And that is everything. If there are any questions, my information's on here, Val Herrera. We also have Fernando Abud, who I'm sure you all are familiar with. Both of us can speak Spanish, so happy to assist constituents if needed with different languages. And I'm happy to open up for questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Val. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of information, and the 300-page document will even add more detail to what you described. And I'm just wondering if from our members here tonight, if you have any questions or comments. Any comments from individuals who actually participated in the process and what that was like?
Oh, I would love to hear from maybe some of our steering committee members. I see Jean's hand up.
And Heidi, do you want to start?
Well,
Nope. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Val. That was great. And I guess my big question is there any way we could just lift your presentation out of this whole meeting and use it? Because you did such a beautiful job of summarizing and kind of, I think, drawing people in. And actually wanting to know more. And so that's what I feel would be really useful in our toolkit.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to have to make you kind of keep repeating this unless you want to. You're getting really good at it.
Well,
yeah. If
Go
we
ahead,
could just take this whole clip and just isolate it. Not that there probably isn't a lot of other great information I'm going to, try to send on to people.
Sure.
But I would love to be able to embed it in the email that goes out with some of the other information.
And we do record these videos and post them online on our YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to get that over to you, Val, for your purposes as well.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's any way to cut it and edit it, because it gets to be it's too much. Sometimes it's too hard to embed a whole YouTube.
Yeah, I agree.
Email.
I bet we can figure that out.
So if you can figure that out, that would be great. It was a really enlightening experience being on the steering committee. And one of the great highlights for me is the relationships we started developing among our neighborhoods. So I think going forward, it will definitely strengthen us as a community voice to try to get some of these policies implemented. So hopefully we're not sitting here 10 years from now with the plan like we are now that was never actually implemented. So I'm excited about it. And I really do appreciate the amount of work that a lot of my colleagues have put into it.
Thank you, Jean. And I will just quickly respond and then get to Heidi. Very much appreciate the comments and feedback. We have an incredible steering committee. So really, you know, that's what makes this the most enjoyable for me, is working with these folks, even though I'm sure they're tired of us after 3 long years. And I will say, Jean, this is actually the foundation of the information we will be sharing at the public meeting. So for consistency, this is also the presentation we'll be sharing with all the community groups and RNOs that we are meeting with. Last week, we met with the Villa Park Neighborhood Association, and they got the same update. That went really well, and we took some comments and feedback, some constructive criticism. And so happy to take anything back that this group might have for us to consider. Heidi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I can echo the things that that Jean said, that the process has been great for community. I like that we're able to have us all together talking about sort of the bigger issues. And I think that's been really helpful with us processing what's going on in our own neighborhoods and just thinking of the bigger picture. I really love the presentation. I think it's really exciting how it does. I think it will pull people in. It seems like it's all very approachable and just very, things that people really run into in their daily lives, crossing streets and lights and trees. And I think it's really, I really appreciate that the city gave us the time to request and to follow through and come back to us and do the work to really take the plan and tip it up on its head, which, that's, and I don't know if a lot of cities would have done that and allowed the time and the space for us to do that. And I think it was a really important process, and I think we're going to be benefiting from it for years to come. So yeah, thank you so much. That was great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Heidi.
Heidi.
Other comments, questions, concerns? I'm not seeing any. Again, don't hesitate to use the chat if you have any comments that you'd like us to record or take back. So Beth is joined us. I think Beth is.
Made it.
Did you make it? Good, there you are. So an update on the Healthy River Corridor study.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I will try to not go too long. I'm so happy to hear all the positive. I didn't get to hear all of Val's presentation, but I'm glad to hear that it's all coming together. And I think you're going to see some overlap here in some of the history and equity issues in particular that we worked on to support Val in her efforts as well. So we're launching another study. We've been working on this for a little while with the city and with Mile High Flood District, and it's called the Healthy River Corridor Study. And just to kind of, oh, go ahead. Sorry, I don't have control. I'm not used to it. So essentially what we're looking at, and concurrently, as all these other things are happening as well, is 12.5 miles of the South Platte River through Denver. So from 52nd in Globeville to Dartmouth at Inglewood, okay? And really starting to build on some of the work that's been taking place over the last year or two, and talking about how do we enhance the function of our entire river, so the functionality of it, but coupled with this recognition that we need a very much stronger user experience. And I think that this doubles up with a lot of the river edge language in the West neighborhood plan. So hopefully it's all consistent. We're trying. So go ahead. I want to just point to a couple things. So the whole notion of this is built on what is a healthy river. Now, this slide has a lot of information on it, and this is one of the boards that we've been using out in the community. But a healthy river is one that actually functions and has a strong riparian habitat. Okay, and if you look at, A is the vegetation filters pollutants, right, and B, the floodplain is strengthened by having that terrace. It absorbs some of that natural ebb and flow of the river during different seasons. Vegetation supports wildlife habitat, of course, tree canopy, of which we have almost none. So very strong and healthy way to help our river. Vegetation to stabilize the banks, and then, of course, recharging our groundwater. So this is a nice, lovely, beautiful picture of what should happen along a river. Now, we don't exactly have this. And in fact, along the South Platte River, based on the work that we've been doing, we have about 4% of this. And the rest of the river is sorely lacking. So I want to point a little bit toward why that is. Go ahead, Sherry. So I will just walk you through this quickly. There is a significant amount of history work we've been doing, also supporting the river effort. And of course, starting with that familiar topographic map, which says, you know, our river corridor once traveled in what is those red dashed lines. So the footprint for the riverbed is much, much wider than the river as we know it today. And as over time, we have really constrained and channelized our river. So in early Denver, of course, pointing toward the initial arrival of the railroads, the location of those along the eastern side primarily, lying within that riverbed, increasing industry and really pushing us to have an envelope of industrial use within that riverbed. Over time, as we get into the early 1900s, we kind of really dig the hole farther and we start bridging over our whole industrial and riverbed. So we had a significant number, that those little yellow arrows indicate the various bridges and viaducts that we used to sort of say, it's better on that side and it's great over here in downtown. And we're just going to bridge right over it and sort of leave that riverbed industry, railroad, and everything else that was happening there, growing pollution alone and sort of ignore it. So that sort of set the stage for us for the many, many things we get to deal with today along this river. Go ahead, Sherry. So as we go forward, we get into the 1930s. And again, this aligns with a lot of the work that you're seeing in this West Area Plan now. But the redlining, the conditions along the neighborhoods, the lack of investment and the lack of opportunity for residents to invest in their neighborhoods. And so that just, once you kind of start to see that evolution of the river, you really start to understand that those neighborhoods suffered just as much as that entire industrial riverbed. And so there's a lot of facts missing, a lot of factors missing today in what makes for a great neighborhood in some of those locations close to our rivers. Then, of course, you know, we get into the 1940s and 50s and we start planning for our highways. And because this land along the river is industrial in nature, has already transportation infrastructure, is cheap to acquire and often floods, it becomes a great and cheap location to go ahead and put our highway. So I-25 gets thrown into the mix as well as I-70 to the north. And this just kind of sets a pattern that we today are having an extremely difficult time getting out of. So in 1965, we have a huge flood. And this is really relevant to, of course, Valverde and Globeville and downtown, the three major areas that flooded significantly. And since that time, we built Chatfield Dam, Bear Creek Reservoir. We kind of manage and control the water as it comes through our very channelized river. So it's a little different situation than we had in 1965 when we didn't have that reservoir capacity and management capability. But nonetheless, we still have flood concerns. We're still heightening the levee through Globeville. There's still lots happening along our river to manage the flooding. So today I'd say we're in recovery. We're attempting to undo a lot of this historic impact, much of which is very relevant to the West Side. And we're attempting to undo some of what you see there, our lovely bike trail along the freeway through the Valverde area. So go ahead. So the idea here is that there is, of course, a huge history to why the river is the way it is and what we have. And about a year ago, we finished a report called the South Platte River Needs Assessment. And this got into a lot of data and detail around where do we have the greatest needs along our river. And there's a lot behind it. And if you go to our website, you can see everything you want to see here. But the gist of it is represented in these very simplistic maps, which the larger the bubble, the greater the need. And of course, our river health itself, the actual function of the river, is great the whole way through the river. We have high need, but mobility, human experience, that interface with adjacent land uses, those land uses themselves and whether they support an active and vibrant environment along our river, those needs are greatest in this section of the river for sure. So all important information to tie directly to our neighborhood plan and to think about as we go forward. Next. So we know we need riparian habitat and of course that's important, but in an urban river corridor, we need other things as well. We don't have the luxury of building just a great natural environment. We have to not only restore and enhance the natural beneficial function of the river, so the green and the water, but we have to ensure recreational and open space. We have to increase mobility options for our city and for commuters and recreation. We have to open up recreational parks and open space. And we have to recognize the importance of that adjacent land use, the way that it's designed, the way that it interfaces with the river and the environment that it creates along the river. So when we talk about an urban river corridor, we're talking about a whole lot more than just the river itself. Next. So this is a graphic model we're developing that can be altered and moved, and we can play with a lot as we go forward. But the idea is just what is an appropriate representation, just a concept of what we mean by that. So in this case, the river, there's steps or boulders, however we want to form that down to the river. You can still access the water and the adjacent, there's trails, but there is a sense that the land use is set back some from the river, giving us the room we need to address all these goals like mobility, recreation, opportunity, and really that vibrancy that we all would like to see along the river. And that's what really makes for an asset, turning our historic river channel into a community asset. So no easy task. Took us a couple hundred years to get there, so it's going to take a little while to undo it, but that's sort of the direction of where we're headed with this concept. Not this picture, but just the idea of. So maybe if we just jump forward, I'll just hit on a little bit about what we've been doing. And then we can be done. But we have a stakeholder committee that we've been working with. We hope to move that forward and continue to have conversations as this evolves. The South Platte River Healthy River Corridor Study just went out and did a series of meetings along the river itself. So trying to sort of make sure we spread ourselves out on both sides of the river and the whole way along. So we had a decent turnout. We talked to a lot of folks who certainly had never heard of this and had a lot of things to say about their own experience of the river and or the trails along the river. So, and we shared, go ahead, Sherry. We shared with them the goals and we kind of collected some feedback. So one of the goals is around water, protecting Denver's waterways from the pressures of urbanization and recognizing the waterway corridors as an asset to safely convey water and sediments. This is just about the water. And we heard lots of folks who are interested say protect the water quality, think about that in our urban areas, plan for the river. And I think this is something that you'd think we would be doing already, but we aren't. So we are now planning for our river. And we're also working and integrating with the folks at the city who are working on the Army Corps investment. Yeah, Jean, go ahead. I see a hand there.
Go ahead, Jean.
I can wait till the end.
Okay.
I just
I'm
have a
almost
couple
done.
questions.
Okay, perfect. I'll just wrap up. So that's our first goal is around water and people really kind of getting into that. And then go ahead. Our second goal is about the ecology. And so this is things, I'll just preserve, protect, and enhance the diversity of wildlife and ecological health, okay? This is one surprisingly, we had a lot of input on this and folks are really interested in this. And one of the most important things that came out was that they were really interested in greater educational opportunities. So, you know, this program we put together is very educational in nature, but they were really sort of eating it up and really asking for more. We should have this integrated with our river corridor. People should be able to understand what the river, you know, function is and how it should be. So I really loved that idea. Next. The third goal is, sorry, I know she's working on it. It's big representation, mobility and recreation. And I think this one goes without saying, everyone is interested in this one. Okay, so this is provide equitable access and space for active and passive recreation, parks and open space and mobility options. So of course, no one's really arguing with this, but we did get some interesting comments on linking the mobility options to adjacent rail lines. So really allowing for this to be a commuter corridor, wayfinding for bike routes and recreation specifically in historically divested areas. So I think that is a really important one. So of course, this one is high on the list and I'd say probably received the most comments. Go ahead. We're almost to the end. Last one, land use and development. So this is one, enhance Denver's waterways in an equitable and sensitive manner by integrating the built environment and future land uses. Now, this study itself just talks about these goals and the idea that we need space in order to be able to address these goals. So is there sort of a zone along our river that allows for this to take place? But this is not a change in zoning, this particular study. And it also is not recommending taking any property. So at this point in time, this is just about influencing the way we think about adjacent land uses and looking for ways in the future to come up with maybe guidelines or something that would address sustainable development, regreening, water quality, different aspects like that that could be part of our land use environment. So with that, I think that's everything I had. So just a quick update and just wanted you all to be aware that this was actually a study underway and hopefully it continues forwards and moves into some other tools.
Jean,
Go ahead.
do you want to go now?
Jean, did you say Jean?
Yes, Jean, yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. I guess on the Healthy River Corridor study I was looking on the website. Is there a list of the stakeholder group?
You know, probably not. We probably
Is
don't.
there any way? I just like
Yeah.
to get that because then I kind of know who's weighed in on stuff. I mean, I know obviously there's some folks like, you know, the Greenway Foundation has been front and center, but
For sure.
I guess I'm just wondering with, you know, the Ball Arena and River Mile
Yeah.
developments, if some of, I guess, impact to the river and even, I don't know, somewhat of restoration is wrapped in at all to like the infrastructure master plan, or is that something that could be involved in the development agreement, or is that something we should be looking for in a community benefits agreement?
Yeah, so the interesting question. I do think that part of the impetus for this study and to really sort of get out there and say, well, what is important to the city along the river, right? Because it's not really stated anywhere except in the One Water Plan where it talks about it's important. So that's great. But now we have to get a little more real about what is important to us. And that's what the intent of this is to inform some of these developments. And I know we're behind the ball, of course, on River Mile, for instance, but we aren't behind all of them. And so there is a chance here to still get out ahead of a few. So it's very development centric in that sense. I don't know right now what the right answer is, say for River Mile. I certainly wouldn't say you need a benefits agreement. I really don't know the right answer. I know there's a lot of conversations taking place with the scope of what they're doing. So they are making changes and improvements to the river, and the city is working with them on that, but I don't have the details of that tonight. And Ballerina is earlier in the process, so it's in concept planning, of course. And I know CPD is definitely working with them. Our urban design chief officer, I believe is her title, is working on that in particular. And so there will be an opportunity there maybe to use, and I'm working with her on this. So hopefully getting this out there to carve some space into those earlier planning efforts.
So I guess, because we are looking at pursuing a community benefits agreement for Ballerina, and they
Okay.
seem to be actually open to it. And
Okay,
so
great.
just like when we were working on the stadium district,
Mhm.
it would be really good to align. And of course, those things that can
Absolutely.
be put into the development agreement would make sense to do that, and not, I won't, not necessarily try to duplicate it in a community benefits agreement.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point, Jean.
And
Yeah.
so, and so we worked with the city and the various departments as we thought we were getting closer to actually getting to the table
Yeah.
for the stadium district. But it looks like, Ballerina will certainly go first. But they are open to that. And so I guess just wanted to have a conversation. So can I just touch base with you, and then we can-
Absolutely.
yeah, and
That'd
we're
be
meeting
great.
with other neighborhoods that obviously have, an interest, and in some ways, maybe a more immediate stake in it. But I think, the West Side Stadium District, and actually Sun Valley, our RNO is the one that brought it up, but I guess that's kind of what we do. So
Yeah.
however we can support that voice, we're going to try to do that. But I think, we'd had a little bit of experience, and we're just willing to kind of add that to the mix for however it moves forward.
That's
So
great.
if I can touch base with you on that. And then the second thing is that who is it for, like, the Weir Gulch project? Who is it that, is there a project director within Dottie for that project?
Yeah, so all of that comes under the umbrella of the Army Corps investment that's coming, right? And so right now, the director of that program, just all of it, so the river, the gulch, everything, is Ashley Grace.
Okay, because I've been getting phone calls from
Okay.
property owners that I think that they're looking to acquire land for that. And so I had asked at one time to have somebody come and speak to our RNO about it.
Okay.
And because I understand that's going to be happening soon, and that they're going to start on that project. So I'd like to get somebody to come out and talk.
Okay. Yeah, I can help with that. Molly
Okay.
North is specifically leading communication efforts on that. And while it is coming soon, it's not coming tomorrow. And I think they're still getting organized themselves. So that may be why they're not out doing all
Okay.
this outreach yet.
Yeah, I know some of the property owners have gotten letters though.
Okay.
And so, they kind of come to us. Not that
Sure.
they're not going to get their lawyers and all that involved, in pursuing it individually, but people have been asking. And of course, everything is under construction
I
in
know.
Sun Valley.
That's why
and
we
so
didn't have a
just
meeting there.
trying to make sure that we actually have a way to drive in and out of the neighborhood, I think is going to be really important, because
Yeah.
Just so we
it's
could-
been really challenging. Because sometimes we'll have DHA, of course, doing all of their stuff, but then all of a sudden Excel shows up and starts shutting down roads, streets for a completely different reason, and people aren't necessarily communicating. And
Yeah.
so,
Maybe we can bring Weir Gulch back to the to the
Yeah.
CAG itself, that might be a good time so everybody could hear about it. And I know we're
That's a
running out
great
of time, but I want to get
Okay,
back to.
sorry, but thank you.
That's okay, Jean. It's okay. We're glad that you raised those issues. Heidi?
Yes, thank you. So I think this is great that the city is putting forth something, that there is something from that end to help balance out the Army Corps' work, and to help support the West Area Plan that has, this new emphasis on water, because, as the Weir Gulch and I think the Army Corps is doing some stuff at the Harvard Gulch as well. But with all the development that is planned, as the water moves through our west neighborhoods and then through areas that aren't developed and soon will be developed, that the questions around, like, there's flood management, but I think as we move into more climate weirding, that that we're going to see, really it's, when we talk about like sinking and recharging the water, the aquifers in our water, that it's also around, it's also as much as it's flood management, it's also drought management as well.
Yes.
And
definitely.
and it seems that these projects along the river and these, like you said, we're a little bit behind on these stuff, as we're always never 5 steps ahead, unfortunately. But I'm wondering if something like this, if it could, to tag on to what Jean was saying around CBAs, they seem to come into play during the infrastructure management plans. And is there a way that, I know this isn't addressing zoning, but could it address the infrastructure management plans? Is there a way that the water, just kind of like we were just talking about with the West Area Plan, that water that this can help inform how that grid and how the mobility and how that connection, especially as you start to put concrete and asphalt over places near the river that have been acting as a sink and now aren't a sink anymore. And I guess the other thing is just how much of climate how much of the climate, just as infrastructure, sort of like, how much does that play into this? I mean, are we, and this might be more of an Army Corps thing, but will there be a removal of floodplains designation along the river, or a re-looking at what this is going to look like going forward, as far as flooding and things like that, and how we can push that and get to be able to use this document moving forward.
So to kind of get to that, so this particular effort is not addressing the floodplain. It is it's almost more of a land use planning exercise, where we have completely been lacking this idea of like, well, what do we mean by our river corridor, right? So it has a much stronger land use and park and rec and, pulling those pieces together to actually say, hey, we want this. The floodplain management aspect of it will be dealt with more in terms of Army Corps dollars, especially with regard to Weir Gulch. And then with riparian restoration, those are sort of the Army Corps places of investment. And I think this particular project isn't so much about investment dollars and how we can change things. It's more about recognizing we don't have that vision to take us there. We don't have anything to say, oh, when you're making your decisions, here is something you should use. So this is to dive a little deeper than our One Water plan, which is very policy driven, to say, hey, we want you to think about these particular things. And you should know that this is what we're trying to achieve along a river. And I think for us just going forward, it's really a stepping stone. And hopefully we get even more detailed about what we'd like to see eventually. But this is kind of that move in that direction.
So it could be used for an IMP.
It could be used for anything you want it to be used for. Yes, it's very much like that. And I think, and the document, I didn't get into the document, but over the next 2 months, we're kind of documenting all this, and it will be a study that you can, you can use. So it'll have a lot of reference to climate change. It has a lot of reference to the why this matters. And what do we mean by space? Is it like 50 feet or 300 feet? What do we mean by that? So I think there'll be a lot of great things you can point toward and use in those conversations, especially circling back with who's working on ballerina and these different efforts.
Jean, we're running low on time. Can you take the last comment and then we'll turn it over to Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted, this is for a few, like a parking lot thing. The thing that's in common is the word water, because I understand that this is not about a healthy river, but there's a rumor going around that's actually, I want to call it a rumor because nobody substantiated it, but it came from a couple of pretty good sources, that, you know, that whole thing we did in terms of the plan, the potential plans for the Colfax, you know, reconfiguration,
Yeah.
which had the whole floodplain is really, you know, so much a part of that
Yeah.
and influencing potential design. And what we've heard is that everything that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to do somewhere over here is going to mitigate the whole need for floodplain control down, you know, in that area in the Cloverleaf and then under, you know, the stadium district and all of that. So that's a rumor that's out there floating around. And I guess I just hope that at some point we can tie the two together.
I would
And
love
so
that.
You don't have to answer it.
I
just
can't
know
answer that.
it's out
I'm not so
there.
sure about that. It's an interesting rumor, but I think
Okay.
that's a great segue to, yes, we need to bring this all together and continue getting our ducks in a row with all of these efforts.
Thank you.
So we'll
Thanks,
come back.
Jean.
Yeah.
Chris, would you like to close us out for the evening?
Yeah, that was a very interesting meeting, and I'm very glad to have met Eugene and Heidi, because I think this is our first time meeting. So thanks for taking some time out of your evening. And our next meeting is going to be on December 1st, same time. So you'll be getting an agenda out that week prior. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful, nice, warm night inside. And feel free to reach out to me if there's anything that I can do to help facilitate moving forward. And thank you so much for coming, Val.
We
Bye.
won't see you before Thanksgiving, so everybody have a great Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Thank you.